We ready? Okay, good to go. Hello? 1, 2. Yeah? Can you hear me at the back there? A very warm welcome to you all, and thank you for turning out tonight. We thought we might have more here, but it's a great crowd. And we're also doing a live feed, courtesy of Ollie over here. So just watch your P's and Q's. If you're going to ask any questions or make any specific comments, you're going to be on air and preserved for posterity. We are on a journey, and this journey started last November at my son-in-law's 40th birthday celebration, when I happened to bump into Dave Delamere, who you're going to hear from in a moment. And I said to Dave, have you got any interest in the seafront enhancement projects? And he said, yes, we have, and that's how it started. So the two of us, after we'd had a few beers on that night, did a little mini brainstorm and off we went. As you'll see in a moment, we've gathered together a fantastic group of people. I'll introduce them in a moment.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, sorry. I will do, yes. That's a good... Sorry. I'm obviously not very well scripted. Sorry. My name is David Waugh, and I'm one of the group, and if you like, one of the instigators. And I'll say a little bit more when we get on to introducing the rest of the team, but fair point, thank you. So we're on a journey. We're very conscious that there's been a real vacuum of information. We put our pitch in, I think it was the 18th or 19th of December, which was the deadline, and we found out at the end of April that we were the preferred party, and at that point we entered into a period of exclusivity. And since then we've been busy, as you'll see from what we tell you tonight. But we're conscious that we've been not really able to give you much information. So tonight is that first opportunity. And what I'm hoping is that you will be as enthusiastic about what we've got in mind as we are, and join us on the journey. I'm just going to remind myself. Yeah, okay, so in a moment, I'll start moving through my slides. Dave Delamere is going to follow me on and talk to you about the really interesting bit, which is about the model and the way he's planned this out. So I'm not going to steal his thunder. And then after that, Steve and Helen are going to talk about community engagement, because community engagement is absolutely at the heart of what we're striving to achieve. Now, at the end, and I would prefer it's at the end because we'll have complications with the live streaming, we're very happy to take questions, and we're expecting lots of questions, but we're also going to be getting questions over the internet. So we need to mix and match, and that's why we'd prefer to take the questions at the end, if you don't mind. We've turned the aircon on, and hopefully it isn't too cold. I was more concerned about it getting too hot, but if anybody is really getting too cold, stick your hand up and somebody at the back of the room will sort it out. Right, so here we go. We've had that slide up from the beginning, and there's just 3 or 4 things I want to draw your attention to on this slide. The first thing is that we have established a Guernsey company, and it's got charitable objectives. So this is not your normal full-blown commercial operation. For the people that are involved, we're not taking any remuneration, and the idea is that when we're up and running, whatever revenues we generate will be recycled into La Vallette. Obviously, we've got maintenance, but also, as I've put on the bottom of this slide, well, I thought I had, yeah, phase 1. What we're focusing on here is phase 1. We hope there'll be a phase 2, a phase 3, or even more. But we've got to stick to the knitting, avoid mission creep, People have already said to us, oh, what about the aquarium? We just haven't got the wherewithal. We've got to focus on this, and we've got to do it 100% right. And that will give everybody confidence then to move on to the next phase. So that's our broad vision. I want to emphasise the community asset, which goes back to the charitable objectives. This is not a short-term thing, this is a long-term thing. And we're looking for a long-term lease from government. I'll come back to that in a minute. But we want the whole community to get involved. We want the whole community to come and enjoy the facility. It is, after all, one of the prettiest spots in Guernsey. And accessibility and inclusiveness are very much at the forefront of our minds. Johnny, where's that clicker? Oh, okay, fine. So, team working. Well, so far, this is the team that we've assembled, the 9 individuals. As I've already mentioned, you're going to hear from David in a minute. You're also going to hear from Helen and from Steve. But these individuals bring a wide range of skills. Obviously, we've got the design skills of Dave and his team, and they've worked incredibly hard to get us to this point. Helen and Steve are going to talk to you about community engagement. Linda is sort of more on the flair side. She's working with Specsavers together with Wendy on the logo and the branding. Andy will be well known to many of you. He's retiring at the end of this week, which is fantastic because we can have all of his time from the end of this week. So we've got Andy's expertise in terms of controlling the build cost, which is going to be an interesting challenge because I'm told that the construction industry in Guernsey is really warming up, and actually that will be one of our biggest challenges, but I'm very happy that it's a challenge of Andy and whoever else he brings in. We've got Ian Damerel on the financial side, so we're very strong on that side. I know a little bit about finances, but not a lot. And Phil Taylor is involved with, well, it's now Taylor's, it was Café de Lys. So he's bringing his catering expertise, and actually Wendy has got catering expertise as well. So we've got most of the bases covered, but we will add to that team as we need to. And I'm conscious, and I'll give you one example. No disrespect to any of those 9 people. We haven't got any young people yet. And I mean young people, I mean really young people. But that's very high up our agenda. But the problem with all of this is we've been balancing so many balls that you've got to, the skill is to bring people in at the right time. But we are starting to move to the stage where we need to involve at least 1, if not 2, younger people. Mary Perkins is with us tonight, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank her and Doug and Specsavers, and also the Specsavers creative team. Because as many of us have done in the past, and I'm sure many of us will do in the future, when you need a bit of help, Mary's on your speed dial. And as always, Mary stepped up and she said, yes, of course, I will allow you to have access to my creative team. And that's been fantastic for us because it's a vote of confidence to be working with such professional people. And although we haven't got the logo and the branding bottomed out, for those of you that haven't already looked, this is the work in progress, if you like. So Mary and the Specsavers team, thank you for the help you've given us so far. It's much appreciated. Obviously, another part of the collaboration and the team is government. I'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards, but it's essential that we work closely with government. We've still to finalise the agreement, but we're a long way down the line, and we've been discussing that proactively and in the right spirit since we were appointed as the preferred party. And it's great Gavin and other leading politicians are here tonight. Other stakeholders, we've already started reaching out to other stakeholders. An example would be the design, not surprisingly, St. Port design, and also people like Pat Johnson, Floral Guernsey. Pat's obviously been heavily involved with the regeneration work that's taken on a bit further down the road, and the Gents Pool. So we've started that process, but again, it's a question of how quickly we can move, when what we really need to do is to concentrate on the basics. And so let's move on. This is a little bit more, this is sort of fleshing out our broad vision. So we've talked about accessible, we've talked about all members of the community. The Island Games is in 2021, so there's nothing better than giving yourself a time frame. And so we felt that if we said we're going to get phase 1 completed by June 2021, wouldn't it be great to showcase this new building to the Island Games visitors and participants? So we've set ourselves up to fail, but I'm very confident that we can do it. But we do need to keep moving forward, and it will depend on, for example, the planners, but we've already engaged with them, as Dave will tell you, on a preliminary basis. We are, and for anybody that's looked at this, looked at the plans, we've built in some flexible space, and the whole idea of the flexible space is to encourage the widest possible use of those facilities. And I'm just going to make, I'm probably going to steal your thunder, Helen, but I'm just going to make reference to Cheshire Homes. And I don't know if anybody has actually seen this, but this is the unveiling of the 2019 Cheshire Home collage, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And I'm very pleased that one of the artists is here with us tonight. And it was Helen's idea to take her pupils, for want of a better expression, down to La Vallette, enjoy the views, and the end result is this collage. And that, I think, is a good example of what we're looking to do down there. So this is not an exclusive place. This is a place that we're going to try and make affordable, accessible, and inclusive. We're mindful of the sustainable development aspect. That's more Dave's domain than mine. The regeneration point is important because we are focusing on the kiosk and the changing rooms. So we're committed to upgrading the changing rooms, and in anticipation of a question, we have no intention of charging for entry. So the whole idea is that we'll have a better facility and we're not going to charge for it. But we have drawn the line at maintaining the bathing pools. And that is one of the key issues that we've still got to iron out with government. Because in principle, they have verbally assured us they'll retain the responsibility. But as I respectfully pointed out to them, if it ends up being £5,000 a year, it will be inadequate. So an engineer's report is being commissioned, and off the back of that, we will have a meaningful conversation about what is a realistic budget for the maintenance of the swimming pools. So what we want to achieve, and this is a really important point, is that we don't develop a great new kiosk or area, cafe, etc., upgrade the changing rooms and watch the swimming pools deteriorate. Right, and the cafe, it's going to be a simple menu with an emphasis on quality, health and affordability. And then we're hoping that once complete, this will be a destination in itself, but actually it'll be part of the pathway out to the South Coast Cliffs. So the journey so far, building design you're going to hear about. We've established phase 1 costings, and the best estimate we've got at the moment is 1.5 million, which is a lot of money. But if you look at it in the long term, the whole idea is that we raise that money, preferably not by way of loans, but we don't rule that out. What we want to do is to raise that money by donations and grants. and then we are confident that we can operate the facilities and make a surplus, and that surplus will be recycled back into the facilities. I know 1.5 million is a lot of money, but again, we're quietly confident that we can do it. We've established a holding website that needs to be upgraded, and that's part of what Specsavers will advise us on. We've had some stakeholder engagement, but we need to do a lot more of that. We've had some initial dialogue with potential funders, but of course, until they can see the plan and hear the vision in a bit more detail, they will normally say, well, that all sounds very interesting, but come back when you can tell us actually something a bit more substantive. We've established a limited by guarantee company with charitable objects. We're well advanced in negotiations with government, and as I've already mentioned, we got the exciting brand development with Specsavers. So what next? Well, we're very keen to submit the planning application. Dave will talk about that, and we're almost ready to go on that. And we need to keep the momentum up, because otherwise we won't hit the target date. We've obviously got to conclude the negotiations with government. Then we can start the fundraising in earnest. We'll obviously finalise the branding, and then, as I said, we need to continue reaching out to stakeholders. And ultimately, our non-negotiable aim is to complete phase 1 on time, and as I keep impressing on the guys, and on budget. Okay, I'm going to pause there. I'm just going to say one thing. I think we are, and I'm a hostage to fortune saying this, I think we're quietly confident that with support from key parties and from the public, we can absolutely make this work. And I think if we can make this work, this is going to be a great example of public-private partnership, where government and the private sector work together for the greater good. That's my ambition, but at the moment we're focused on this. So at that juncture, I'm going to hand over to Dave, and he's going to talk you through the really interesting bits. Do you need that?
Yeah. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at the model and plans on display at the front, and hopefully in the next 10 minutes I'll be able to help you understand exactly what they mean and where they've come from. I'll be explaining briefly the process we've been through over the past 6 to 8 months since our original expression of interest, exactly what the site includes and excludes, the brief that we've established, and ultimately what the building offers and how it will look. The Vallette stretches between the bottom of the Val de Terres and the aquarium. Over the past few years, this area has seen a huge amount of regeneration carried out by various voluntary groups, and our aim is to continue with this positive contribution to the community. Described by the vision as the playground of St. Peter Port, it attracts a wide range of users, a wide range of activities. It is the start, the middle and the end. It is the gateway to the cliffs, its views of the islands, historic landmarks, back towards town, its historic tidal pools used daily by hundreds of you guys. It is walking distance from our town centre, and it's a free public space for all to enjoy throughout the year. For clarity, and as Dave's mentioned, the site for our proposal at this phase is just the existing building and the adjacent mound. The outline of this site is shown on the slide in the dashed red line. It does not include the road and does not impact on the parking provision. It also does not include any alterations to the pools themselves. Although alterations to the building to provide accessibility for all would facilitate the opportunity to create accessibility to the pools in the future. So over this period, we've been working hard to fully understand the site, the overall size, the ground conditions, the change in levels, the condition, construction and services to the existing building, the surrounding vegetation, key views, the orientation, and where takes the brunt of the weather. We've also spent time understanding the various users, their differing needs, the activities they participate or observe, and how this is influenced by the weather, different times of the day and during different seasons. We've established what facilities are currently accommodated, those that aren't accessible, those that need improvement, and what is missing. These are all the pieces of the puzzle that have built our brief. It's the framework for us to develop a solution that best serves the community. So, how do we translate that into a practical building within a sensible budget and maximise the reuse of the existing structure? The changing rooms will remain at the lower level within the existing building. They'll be tanked, insulated and completely refit to provide a clean, hygienic facility up to modern standards and a free asset that the community can use for swimming and other activities in the area. There'll be a level access to the boardwalk area that overlooks the pools and an internal stair to circulate between the upper level and the changing rooms as an alternative to using the existing slipway. The raised boardwalk provides the opportunity for access to all for the pools, and it would be great to see this happen as part of a future phase of the works. The changing room layout itself has been altered to provide the greatest flexibility. As a community asset that serves predominantly outside activities, the use can vary daily. The southern changing room, on the far side, stays largely in the same proportion as it is now, and provides an independently operable space where access can be controlled if required. The adjacent changing room on this side is connected internally via a staircase to the upper level, with space for information boards and storage for community groups. Between this, the building has been opened up structurally to provide a sheltered area, somewhere to hang your towel, somewhere with showers and lockers that can be accessed by all throughout the day and the year. We know that many of you here tonight like to gather here to have tea and cake after your swim. This area gives you somewhere that you can sit and shelter, overlooking the pools and continue to enjoy this important part of your swim. This flexibility provides the opportunity to separate facilities when required, whether it be schools and public, girls and boys, home and away, or even wet and dry. It gives options that can be informed by use and therefore is the most useful community asset it can be. The kiosk stays at the same level as the existing, but is an entirely new part of the building. It's set back to provide a south-facing outdoor terrace which engages with the public face to the road as well as to the pools. This also forms a tiered space for activity briefings, performance events, or just somewhere to sit sheltered and have your lunch. A gentle ramp provides disabled and buggy-friendly access, but is also generous enough for service vehicles and less mobile users to get closer to the building. The kiosk offers some internal eating and viewing space, but also areas that can be separated for meetings, training, events, or exhibitions. It's been designed on a grid to allow panels to divide the space, but also provide exhibition boards and an opportunity for the community to interact with the layout of the building. Beyond that is largely function. Stairs to changing rooms with a large roof light bringing natural light down through the entire building, disabled toilet facilities, a lift to the upper level, associated catering facilities. It is designed to be a building of quality and robustness, but not something precious and shiny. It welcomes those in swimsuits, work suits, or walking boots. It is inclusive in both form and function. One of the key aspects of our original pitch was to connect to the mound, regenerate a neglected, underused and undermaintained space on the site that has a wasted potential. We also wanted to make this mound part of the journey, to attract people to walk up and over it, to be drawn into this pocket of biodiversity and exposed to the views from above it. Something to encourage life and movement on all sides of the building. It can be accessed via the existing ramp to the town end of the mound, steps from kiosk level, and also via the lift. At this level, the pavilion provides an events, exercise or performance space that can open onto a range of external areas for mixed use. From corporate receptions and sunrise yoga classes to live music and farmers markets, it welcomes a wider range of the community and the generation of revenue that can be reinvested into the free public facilities and hopefully future phases of developing the wider area. The upper level pavilion is pushed back and rotated to match the orientation of the ladies' pool. This serves to break the mass of the building and means that it does not provide any additional shade over the pools from the setting sun. It is designed as a lightweight structure that can be opened up to work with or without the various external spaces that surround it. It is elevated to suit the existing mound levels, with a sunken eastern terrace providing shelter and uninterrupted views of the pools and the islands beyond. The overall volume of the building has been informed by all of these uses and the spaces that they require. but also to meet current regulations for accessibility, thermal performance, and health and safety, to integrate efficiently with the existing building and site constraints, and to avoid any detrimental impact to the existing trees and the bathing pools themselves. But it has also been designed to weave itself into the site, to offer security, shelter, and privacy, to feel like it has been swallowed up by the landscape. It is designed to respect the landscape as the dominant feature of this site and take its overall form from that influence. In the same way the building has been designed to sit within the volume of the site, the materials have been selected to complement the tones of the surrounding landscape. They've been selected for their practical properties, resilience to weather, suitability for use within the existing and the new structure, robustness and sustainability. The lower level is clad in 100% recycled cladding profile. It is made from compressed silage bags and is used beneath the water for construction of fish farms. It provides a robust and flexible lining to deflect the heavy weather conditions that this part of the building is exposed to, and is also suitable for lining the existing structure. The new structure above is a concrete frame, providing a natural tone and a maintenance-free, robust finish to both the interior and the exterior. Lightweight infill and the pavilion are clad in a recycled composite product that is also entirely stable and maintenance-free. We've developed a building that utilises what it can of the existing. It does not dramatically increase the footprint of the building on the site, but it attracts an entirely new dynamic of use and user. It is a design and quality construction providing a landmark building, but with the robustness to address its location, minimal maintenance to ensure it remains this way. It's been designed to consider future phasing and development of the area, but also with the standalone flexibility to adapt and evolve with our community. And that's me, and I'll hand over to Helen and Steve to talk a little bit about the community engagement that's involved there.
This was supposed to be red. And is this working?
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Are you on?
I'm on.
Good.
Thank you for coming. And to have so many people here makes me think that you all care, which is really what we want to do for the bathing pools. We are Helen Bonner-Morgan and Steve Sharman. And
I'm Steve.
yes. And we want to tell you why we're involved. I'm involved because I was brought up in Guernsey. I am a very, very passionate Guernsey girl, woman, and I have been very lucky to spend my life running around the seaside of Guernsey and enjoying the wonderful Guernsey lifestyle. And I have now managed to bring my children back, my husband, to live over here. Through my working life in more recent years over the last decade and my voluntary work, I've become very, very passionate about people engaging in meaningful and purposeful activities. I spent a number of years working at the Guernsey Cheshire Home with Angela and Karen, who are here with us tonight. And I believe that the bathing pools offers an opportunity for the whole community to engage in meaningful and purposeful activities that will support their health and their well-being and to live a long and happy, well-lived life. And I think Steve will echo that reason.
Welcome everybody. Well, I was born and bred on the island, but I left the island for 25 years, but spent my career working in the field of physical activity and physical education within university and schools, and then latterly at a national governing body. And I came back to the island to look after my father, who had dementia. And when he died, I decided that the best thing for me to do was to live in one of the most wonderful places in the world. And I'm all about environment and how the environment links into people's well-being and physical activity and how you can make it the best place to live. So that's what I've committed the next 10 years of my life doing. At the moment, I'm involved in lots of projects that are hopefully working from preschool right through to later life to ensure that people are physically active, and for everybody that's completely different. So I'm really enthused about a project like this, which can be part of a journey on that journey to improve physical activity.
So we really want to ensure, and the brief that we were building with Dave and his team was to ensure that the building was very welcoming and accessible for everyone. We've got some great places in Guernsey, but not many places that introduce a breadth of activities. I know a lot of you here are swimmers, and we just feel that the space and the design of the building will allow for that flexible use. So we're very keen to introduce art activities. I'm involved with a charity called Arts for Impact, and we are delivering art activities to support people's health and well-being. But if you think of that as visual arts, you can translate that to all the other arts, and indeed lots and lots of other activities. So we're really keen to engage with all sorts of other organisations to see how you would use that space and benefit the community.
I think from my point of view, accessibility, we look at this project as being something that is 24/7. That environment now is still living. There may be people down there fishing. So 24/7, 365 days of the year, accessibility. Dave touched on it in his presentation around the start, the middle, the end of some sort of journey and how people access that site. So, you know, accessing it and getting as close as possible in a car because that's what somebody needs to do to actually access those pools, or walking or cycling. However you get there, the accessibility point to the whole of our community. And it's interesting that, you know, we think we're really lucky living on this island that everybody will go to the beach and everybody would understand about our beautiful cliffs, but there's lots of people that don't, and there's lots of people that don't access those areas. So for us, it's about opening this part of the island and then maybe the next part of the island up.
Yeah, and that brings us to the health and well-being element. What we really want to try and do is support people to be healthy, but make it easier for them. And I think that I have a couple of sobering statistics, which were shared given to me by Piers Mitchell, one of the GPs that's really been very much promoting social prescribing in the island. And 7 in 10 deaths is caused by lifestyle factors. And if you look at that seriously, we really all do need to look after ourselves as individuals, but I feel quite strongly that our environment doesn't always make it easy for us to look after ourselves. So I think that as a collective and as a community and as designers, we have a responsibility to create an environment which makes it easy for us to look after ourselves as individuals. So environment, I feel, and the space that we live in is very, very important.
Well, health and well-being for everybody is completely different. So to be slightly interactive, put your hand up if you swim at the pools or in Havelet Bay, or you have done the last year. Fantastic, put your hands down. I put my hand up, I went today as well. How you do that is completely different. How you all do it is completely different, because some of you will go out and swim to a mark, some of you will just swim in the pool and swim a length, some of you would just dip your toe in. It's completely different for everybody. And we can't be worthy and try and tell everybody how to live their lives more healthily. What we can do is provide an environment for you all to decide. I think it sits in some part of the island, which is the most amazing gym in the world. And it's free, because you can use that environment as a jumping off point to go up onto the cliffs. You can use that environment to come out of work at lunchtime, walk down, get some mindfulness. You can use that environment to swim in the pools, or to be a bit brave, as I've said, and try and find the seal in Havelet Bay and swim out to the mark. So it is, health and well-being is different for everybody. We're just trying to provide the environment. You will actually provide the activity. And I don't think we would ever tell anybody what to do, but we would encourage people to be there.
And I'll add to that, health and well-being isn't just about being physically active. A lot of the activities that we deliver are about people connecting with one another. Loneliness, another sobering comment, is it's one of the bigger killer than smoking. And so we really want to introduce the opportunity for people to socially connect as well, but whilst doing meaningful and purposeful activities. So I think we've probably touched on this already. Really, we want people to be able to either really switch on there and be stimulated by singing for health, or art activities, or other things like learning new things, playing backgammon. We've got the U3A, lots of different organisations that are are trying to encourage people to do more. But indeed, this is also a place that you can switch off as well. So two aspects, really.
I felt incredibly switched on the other day when I was walking out after in 7:15 in the morning and it was hailing and I was getting into the water, and I thought it's a great start to the day. But just to share with you, I swim with a group of people that up to this year would never swim in the sea, and in the jobs that they are doing the island, it's been amazing for their mental and physical well-being. So they switch off and they switch on. And at various times of the day, if you go in the middle of the day and you go down there just to look at a view that's been there for hundreds of thousands of years and looking at the islands, then you get that mental well-being as well. If you jump in the water, you get a different sort of thrill.
Yeah. You've mentioned that natural visual fix, because that's something that you get when you're down there looking across to the islands. And you've mentioned it, yeah, connecting to the natural beauty. I mean, the wonderful canopy walking down from Fort George and through from Colburn Road and Val de Terres, you really connect with nature down there. And when Angela and the group and I went down to visit La Vallette, we saw all the different types of birds and the flora and the fauna, and it's just a really beautiful place. So that's what we as people need. We all do it around the island, but to have a public park in Guernsey, in town, in the St. Peter Port capital, is really important. So I think we really do need that destination.
I think for everybody, sometimes we sit in our goldfish bowl of Guernsey and we forget actually what we have. It's when I have friends that come over and I take them down there and they say, "What, this is free? You can access this? Doesn't this cost you?" Or we take them up onto the cliffs and look back at the view. So we shouldn't take it for granted, and we should really relish the fact that we have this, and certainly people who come and visit the island do. Yeah, and
Dave's and the team's design, I think, will ensure that all that natural light comes into the space, and will, you know, as individuals there, will be able to really enjoy that space rather and covered up, and rather than being in the rain. That's something that we have been concerned about. Okay, yeah. So
I was going to cafe facility, just that, you know, if we don't have the pools and we don't have the sea and we don't have the cliffs and we don't sort of do a 360 sometimes, then it just does become a cafe. So everything else contributes, it's all linked again.
Absolutely. So the short term, Dave have already mentioned, there's a lot of Daves, but we really do want to get this ready for the 2021 games. It's going to be an amazing space for people to watch activities in Havelet Bay, and indeed I think there's a relay going on there towards the end of the week. And I just think, I've been a part of the Island Games family for a number of years. I know what an event it is. It's absolutely incredible. I went to Gotland and to Gibraltar just recently, and I would be so proud to welcome those 3,000 people to our island and to show off that we've got this extraordinary pool, and I think it would be such a shame not to develop it for that event.
I think this means to me, look, we're only guardians, aren't we, of whatever we're involved with. You know, whatever is our passion or whatever we're involved with, we are only guardians for a short space of time. And in the end of the day, we're passing this on to the next generation. So why don't we pass it on in a better way, make those people we're passing on to more informed, more educated about our island, and give them somewhere where they can pass it on to their next generation. This isn't ours. It's all of ours, really.
Yeah. And so we do see this as being a place that can introduce other organisations. We would really love to talk to the various commissions, the Guernsey Employment Trust, Health Connections, who's doing some great work with social prescribing, the schools, the colleges. There are all sorts of people that can get involved with this space. The building invites you to use it and connect with it as much or as little as you like. And I think that it'll be a great facility if it happens, and we'd really like to see it happen.
I can't add anything to that. I think it was brilliant.
Excellent. We've just got a few images here that we'd like to share with you. Certainly we can see these sorts of activities could take place down there. We've got some ephemeral art, different ages engaging in visual arts, but indeed this could be singing, it could be all sorts of things, and I'd like you to really paint that picture yourselves and talk to us about this further in the future. Yeah, I'm very proud of this slide because it just shows the processes that we went through to come to this beautiful collage. Every piece was handmade by the residents and day visitors of the Guernsey Cheshire Home. And I wanted to share it with you because we were very inspired by the place. So thank you for indulging me. So the air display, my microphone's gone a bit off, I think. So it's a zone for that, for exploring.
My godson on the left.
Yeah. It's a wonderful tunnel that could be a tunnel again, who knows. Although this is on the west coast, I really feel that the east coast really could benefit from a place that children feel challenged or in the pool.
This whole point about being connected to the cliffs, connected to everything within the environment, and going back to whatever your health and well-being is. Should we bring the boards back? Who is that? It's probably somebody here. Terrible picture.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see the friendships developing as well. Steve, you could probably expand on the friendships that have been developed down there.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my point of view, when I came back and spoke to my dad, and he was going through dementia, and he had no short-term memory but the long-term memory, and he talked to me about the friendships he had growing up, and the Half Moon Cafe, and walking around there and going to these sort of events and jumping in the pools with his friends, and that's just gone through generations. So these are my friends. These are the people that I swim with terrible synchro team. But we have an enormous amount of fun, and you know, you're looking at people in that picture who would never ever be in the seawater a year ago, and we go in every day now, like loads of other people. So other people have been inspirations for me and for these guys as well.
So I think we're nearly ready for questions, Dave, aren't we?
Right, yeah. Thank you both. Yeah, your passion is very evident. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Dave, as well. So can we just put our hands together for the speakers? Well, we're not done too badly because we've only been going for less than 3/4 of an hour. And we'd like to get finished by 8:30, but I've said absolute cut-off is 9 o'clock because I'll definitely need a beer by then. And I think we should finish well before that. But it's over to you now. This is question time. So we're going to field questions from the floor, and we're also going to take questions that are coming through the internet. I know it's always difficult. We've got 2 roving mics, and we've got a sound man as well somewhere, Johnny. So if you are going to ask a question, can you take one of the mics? Because the problem we've got is the live feed won't be able to say what your question is, or they won't be able to hear your question. So Dave and I are going to stand here. Some of the questions might be tricky, in which case we'll ask one of the other members of the team to answer it. And actually, just before we go to questions, can I just ask the members of the team to stand up? Because I meant to ask them before. So can you just make yourselves obvious? There's Linda and Wendy at the back. Dave, obviously, Helen, Ian Damerel, Andy Hall, us 4 here. That's the team so far, but as I say, we might well expand it as we move forward. So, right, I'm going to pause. We'd love some questions, preferably nice, easy ones, but you're here, and now's the opportunity. John? We'll get a little system going here.
Yes, Dave. Could you tell us, please, how many people use the bathing pools today in the course of a year, please?
I don't know the answer to that. Does anybody else know the answer to that?
You have an A answer.
I have a answer. It might not be the answer that you actually want. I'm not sure. Over the summer, we did some analysis of uses down at the pools, and we counted 1,000 people coming through in 5 hours, and that was on a summer's day. If you go down in the morning, I'm sure there are swimmers. How many of they are between the hours of 6 and 8. Certainly at lunchtime today there were 20 or 30 people, but over the course of the whole year. I can extrapolate for you, but...
So, John, was the purpose of your question as to how busy it's going to get?
No, the question, what I wanted to know was, if you upset the people who use it today, what is the social displacement that you affect?
That's a good question, but my question back to you is why should we upset the people that are using it already?
Well, the point is, if you know how many people use it now and you bring them on board, you've got the beginning of this family, this association of people, but you don't seem to know what your potential membership could be immediately.
Well, it's not going to be a membership.
Well, no, well, supporters, shall we say?
Yeah. Well, there are the Friends of La Vallette. I mean, at the early stage of the process, we've spoken to the Friends of La Vallette. Steve, I think, has got an ongoing dialogue with them. But you know, it's an interesting point, and maybe it's one that we should look more closely at. But I do come back to the point. You know, this is a lengthy process. We're not going to be up and running until the middle of 2021, and we've got to jump over a lot of hurdles and obstacles before we get there. But yeah, I mean, maybe we should do a more in-depth study about usage. And of course, one of the things with the usage is it will be spread throughout the day. Thanks. Next. Oh, well, that's great. Oh, yeah, there's a lady up front here.
Hi, I'm Sasha, and I run a website called Island Mums.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to ask specifically about what you're thinking in terms of making it accessible to especially families with really younger children, because you could say that perhaps it's not as accessible or safe for families with really small kids.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to get Dave to answer that. But just to be clear, are you talking accessibility to the cafe and the swimming pools, or one or the other?
I guess both, and it's thinking whether we could do a small playground area in addition, you know, on the top or somewhere, just to make the whole area in your project more accessible.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things, I don't know if Dave touched on it, but part of the site that we are, if you've like, got not authority, but control over, there's a bit on the other side of the road. But in phase one, we're not looking to do anything there. That would be almost certainly a phase two. But that might afford the opportunity to do something. It could be play equipment, or we could also consider doing it, and Dave will have to correct me here, on the hump. And of course, the other thing is that within the cafe facility itself, with the flexible space, I think one of many things that we've talked about is, you know, we might have a big table the kids can sit at, and they can do their colouring, and, you know, they can entertain themselves. But it's going to be that sort of creative, you know. But Dave, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'll just say that the building we've focused on that accessibility from all ages, from children to also less mobile users. In terms of sort of provision of whether there's play equipment or gym equipment, we've not really gotten that far sort of down the road, I suppose, of how we sort of almost furnish those outside spaces. But what we're doing is creating external spaces that have flexibility. So whether they are used for as a more of a public plaza, or whether there is some play equipment within it, whether there's some gym equipment within it, I think that's the sort of thing that will start to come out of the building. What we're trying to do, or out of the process, what we're trying to do originally is create a building that has that accessibility to all of those areas, and then see how the uses start to inform that.
Okay, thanks. Any more? Oh, we got one over there, and we got one over there. And have we got any coming in online, Emily? Okay. Well, if we take Dave here, and then Pierre, we won't forget you, and then we'll take one online, but after this one, yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I'm struggling here with two microphones. I'm not quite sure which one I'm talking to, but David Farriman. Dave, you touched on it briefly, but could you just say a little bit more about sustainability and how you will cover security costs and some staff costs in future? Just how will it be sustainable financially going forward once it's up and running?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if we've got no borrowing, that's a good start. If we've got the lease that we're striving to achieve, we will not have any outgoing there because we're negotiating on a peppercorn rent. Okay, so those are two major. I mean, basically, the negotiation is it's a peppercorn rent because we're putting in all the capital cost, and then we've got to go and raise the money. Obviously, we are relying on Phil Taylor in particular to guide us as to how profitable the cafe might be, even if we're not charging, absolutely tip-top prices. But also, we've got, this flexible space. I mean, it could be Pilates, it could be yoga, it could be Tai Chi, it could be all sorts, it could be exhibitions. And I also think, certainly in the early stages when there's a novelty factor, I think it will also be appealing to corporates, to people who want to have private parties down there, particularly in the summer months. And so that's a potential income stream. So, I mean, we're still working through the granular detail of the business plan, but, again, those are the sort of reasons why we think it's sustainable.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Okay, sorry, we're going to take one from Pierre, but have we got an online one? Okay.
Yeah, we have. So we've got a question from Alvin, who has asked, would it not be better to make the pathways free of landslides and rockfalls rather than build a flashy new building? And why not just a renovation of the existing building?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's flash. I think it's in keeping, and it's sustainable materials, recycling materials, etc.
Yeah,
Dave, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean the condition of the existing building and the facilities it offers don't actually meet the current regulations and sort of health and safety standards. So what we're trying to do in the infrastructure building actually improves the safety of that whole area of that mound and essentially addresses a lot of those issues of, is he talking about landsliding on the adjacent bank or? So we're actually keeping a lot of the existing building. So it is actually in some ways a renovation of the existing building because we are keeping that lower basement area, but there is also additional footprint going onto that building in terms of how we build it up and engage with that mound. So that's where the new construction is, and it's replacing essentially the kiosk element that isn't fit for purpose.
Well, hopefully that at least in part answers the question. This is always going to be the difficult thing. I'm sure that gentleman will come back to you, Emily, if he's not satisfied. So Pierre, and then Justin, I know you've got one, and I think somebody else over there. So, Pierre.
Hi, thanks, Dave. You've mentioned quite a lot about accessibility, and clearly that's going to involve large parts of the day. I can't imagine the night, but you never know. I'm interested in how you're going to deal with issues around security. We've had over a number of years the occasional vandalism that's occurred at the Vallette, and whilst it's something that doesn't happen frequently, it has happened and it has caused a lot of distress among the regular users. And I wondered, with such a wonderful development as you're proposing, how you're going to deal with security issues.
That's a very good question. The answer is, at the moment, that's not something we've considered in detail. Being naive, I'd like to think that once we've redeveloped, actually everybody be so proud of it that people won't vandalise it, but that's probably being naive. So we will have to look at security. That's the sort of thing that Dave and Andy Hall, Andy, I don't know if you've got any particular ideas on that. I mean, to me, it's just something that's going to come out of the wash as we get into the really detailed planning, and it'll be alongside of internal furnishings and the finishes generally. Sorry,
Yeah.
we need a... Yeah, sorry. I just want to put you on the spot, Andy.
That's okay. That's okay, Dave. As you say, it is very much a detail, but we are aware that it is an issue that needs certainly a lot of thinking. I think there's a good chance that we will have somebody present from our team during the day and the early evening. Whether some of the facilities get locked up, I don't know, at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever it is, depending on the season. And I think we'll certainly want to have some CCTV around the place to help us. Much more than that, it's as Dave says, it's relying on the good nature of Guernsey residents, really. But there will be some security in place, and we hope it'll be a bit of a suck it and see to see how that goes, I think.
Thanks, Andy. Justin. Justin, he's halfway down here. And then Emily, have you got another one? Okay, yeah, no, we'll take that one because that's of interest, I think, to people. Justin.
Thanks, Dave. £1.5 million bill cost and a preference for no borrowing. Be curious to understand some of your thinking on the fundraising strategy. Are you going to go down the route of sort of major gifts and looking at high nets, foundations and trusts, or is it on the retail end looking at potentially a crowdfunding campaign, or a combination of the two? And who's done this type of project well when it comes to raising money? And are you looking at examples out there?
Yeah, I mean, it will be a mixture. I mean, wherever it comes from. Obviously, it will be easier for us to reach out to the bigger grant givers, for example. And I'm quite well tuned in to a number of charitable trusts, and I'm reasonably hopeful we'll fit their criteria. Now, whether this piques their interest, this scheme, is another matter. Individuals, certainly. And in a way, we would love to have crowdfunding. I mean, we talked about buy a brick, for example, and that for £10 you can buy a brick. And we might still do that, but the problem with that is it doesn't get you significant amounts of money. So it might be something that we do later on, because I think we all know that the hardest money to raise is the early money, because people will say, well, if you've got to raise 1.5 million, you've got nothing. Come back to me in 6 months when you've got £500,000 or whatever. But other projects, I mean, obviously there are community centres, for example. That's one that's sort of comes to mind. But I think from my experience with the Guernsey Community Foundation, I've got a pretty good idea of where there might be money. And I'm really pleased that Stephen Jones, who is the chair of the Social Investment Fund, which will be up and running next year, and who spoke to the Association of Guernsey Charities only last week, is here to hear our pitch, because he knows that we'll be knocking on his door amongst several others. So, yeah, I mean, in a way, obviously planning's significant, obviously a satisfactory agreement with government, but fundraising is the other biggie. And it is a bit scary, but I'm quietly confident. Not overconfident, though. So thanks for that question. All right, we're going to take cafe next year.
Yeah, so want to know what's happening next summer. Will there be no tea room again next summer?
That's up in the air, to be honest. Just backtracking, we were originally asked if we'd open the cafe for this year, and it got so complicated and it was going to be such a distraction that we said, look, we've got to focus on the main issue. And as a consequence, it was offered to a third party. They've been running the basic cafe. Now, obviously, once we start putting spades in the ground, that's going to be a challenge. And ideally, we want to be putting a spade in the ground at Easter. Now, Andy's better qualified to answer the detail of how disruptive that's going to be. But my guess, it would be very disruptive. So what we might have to do is to provide some temporary facility. How we do that, I'm not too sure. It could be a mobile unit, it could be just a temporary structure, but obviously there might be planning implications. But it's certainly, what we don't want to see is that there is absolutely no cafe facility at all. But that's detailed discussion that we've got to have with property services in the first instance. Okay, yeah, Rosie. No, it's coming.
Helen, I just wondered if you could flesh out a little bit how you envisage the cafe and restaurant kind of area when you are finished and it's up and running. Do you see yourself leasing it out, or is it something that you see operating yourself? And what kind of thing do you see yourself offering?
Yeah. Ideally, we would like to run it ourselves, because the problem, and there's two issues here. There's the issue of, because government will retain the ownership of their land, if we wanted to sublet it, we would have to get their approval or permission. So that's that technical issue. But the practical issue is, if we leased it out, we don't necessarily have full control over the offering. And so because we've got embedded core values, we're going to start running it ourselves. Now, I'm not saying that, if we make a pig's ear of it, we might not be left with an alternative other than to lease it out. But I don't think that will happen. We would definitely almost certainly start off running it ourselves. And we've got lots of ideas about how we will run it. What we've been concerned about at the moment is to develop the plans in a way that the catering facilities are as flexible as possible. But we are not in any way, shape or form going to be competing with high level catering facilities, restaurants. It is a cafe. So we want an emphasis on healthy food. But we've got to balance that, because there'll be a lot of people that come that actually do want a burger. So we will actually devise the menu much further down the line, but we want there to be an emphasis on healthy eating. And just to give you, we have discussed some of this detail. For example, we don't want to sell plastic bottles, as an example. So we're looking at, many of you will know that Taylor's, formerly Café de Lys, use recyclable coffee cups. That's the sort of thing that we will be looking at. So I think the menu will be quite simple. And another way, just on this, another way of engaging with the community, and this is not my idea, but I think it's a great idea, is that we might have a dish of the month, for example, and ask the school kids to devise the dish of the month. So to get the school kids involved. Now, whether it's primary kids or secondary kids, I don't know. It could be College of FE. But this is what we want is maybe a dish of the month that's a healthy dish, but it's not being driven by us, it's being driven by the community. So, does that help? Yeah. Thank you. Emily, have we got any more?
Yes. So Joe wants to know if from the social enterprise in the building could be used towards the maintenance of the pools to keep them safe, not just the main pool, but also the smaller pools as well.
Sorry, so if we make a surplus
could that be used to help maintain the pools, to fix them and make them safe?
Well, in principle, there's no reason why not. But I have already mentioned that we want to leave that responsibility with government. So it would kind of be illogical. But, of course, this is not precise science. And so when we say maintaining the pools, we're very clear that it needs to be, this is not just a couple of £1,000 a year. This needs to be a substantial sum, and we need to have visibility in terms of the commitment going forward. But of course, that isn't necessarily going to be bells and whistles. So it may well be that if we can generate enough surplus, part of our phasing, phase 2, phase 3, whatever, we might say to Dave, OK, Dave, we've now got some surplus money. Let's look at ways in which we can improve experience for the swimming pools. And of course, it doesn't necessarily have to come from us, because if we've been successful in raising the money and people say this is fantastic, it does mean that we've got a chance of raising more money to do the next phase. But certainly as a principle, we won't have a problem. We want to use the surpluses, other than having a capital sinking fund, so that we don't end up with a big bill at some point which we can't pay. Any sort of reasonable surpluses we're going to recycle into the area, which could include the swimming pools. Right. Hopefully that's okay. Yeah, the gentleman here. Okay.
Is it working?
It's on, yeah.
Hello, Lawrence here.
Hello.
You mentioned corporate events, private parties and so on earlier on. It's not unknown in the UK for things like parks to be closed to the general public for such events. Is there any possibility that we could rock up at the pools and find they've been shut down because XYZ Limited is having an open day there?
No, well, it's a very good question, actually, and if I'm being honest, I don't think we sort of thought that through in detail, but I think my personal view is that the corporate events would be more of an evening, and don't necessarily involve the swimming pool. But I think it is a very good point, and it's something that we've got to be mindful of.
I can probably add to it slightly as well, because in the way that we've sort of laid out the configuration of the building, we've sort of built in this flexibility that the building can be separated off. So there's an area that can be used for a corporate or a private event that still has access to facilities that they will need, but equally still allows the public part of the building to function at the same time. So it still allows the kiosk facilities, the changing room, the toilets and the services that are needed. Equally on the pavilion level, the same thing. So that there's an element, there's a way to close things off so they still feel private without having to shut the whole site and lose the whole site. So and certainly we don't foresee that being the swimming pools either, or the changing facilities. So.
Thank you. Yep. Mark.
Thank you. First of all, I think it's a very exciting project, and thank you to all of the people that are putting their time into this for nothing. Two things I wanted to say. First of all, just please, when the works are being done, if there can be facilities for the swimmers to go down and change and have somewhere whilst those works are taking place, that would be very much appreciated. The second thing is, and I know you took care to mention before about the parking and the road being outside of your remit, enough people from the States in the room now, if they could bear in mind, and this is taking John's point on displacement as well, the number of elderly people that go down and use the pools, the number of people who go and use the pools at lunchtime that work out of town, a number of nurses, for instance, that come down from the hospital, to go down, and if there are 30 or 40 covers in the cafe there, and I appreciate it's a cafe and not a restaurant, but still there might be an element of displacement if people go down there and then there is nowhere to park. So I would ask that you work with the states, and that the states think very carefully about how they're going to cater for that.
Thanks, Mark. I couldn't agree with you more. I think, as Dave has already said, the way our design doesn't affect the parking at all. So what we're talking about here is, can we improve the parking? And that's outside of our remit, but obviously we've got a vested interest in trying to get improved parking if we possibly can. But I think we've also got to be creative in how we access the site. And if you go back to the health and well-being, and I know this won't apply to everybody, but it's a flat walk from town, and as Steve has said, it's not that long a walk. We will consider things like Boris bikes or equivalent, possibly electric scooters. I mean, I know these are all, some people will say, oh, that's not applicable. We've got to be creative. I mean, we'd love to run an electric water taxi from the harbour, but that's complicated because where are you going to disembark when you get around? But we've got somebody looking at that. So we're trying to be creative, but we know it's a problem. It is one of the biggest challenges, unfortunately. And we've also spoken to the bus company, and they love the idea of helping us maybe have an old charabanc that is toing and froing, particularly at the busy times. So, and we, you know, let's have more ideas, because we haven't got a monopoly on wisdom and the best ideas. But thank you, because you made a couple of very good points there. Emily, is there another one? Oh, great, brilliant. Anybody else? Yep, thank you. There's a lady, Brian, but there's a lady in the back, and then Brian.
Thank you. I've noticed that I can sometimes not even find a space at all at the moment. When people are swimming, they normally take up the 2-hour spaces. Could we look at, I'm sort of really endorsing what Mark just said, could we look at all those 10-hour spaces which are basically taking up a lot of beautiful area, and it's just for workers who are working in town. It would seem to be that especially if you've got people who you want to attract to the new cafe, I think we need to look at the parking as part and parcel of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, our point is well made. Brian, Johnny or Wendy, there's a Brian here.
Yeah, Brian Chapman. We are part of the Friends of the Vallette. Just to put it into perspective, Dave and I met before they actually put their bid in, and we did tell him exactly what our bid was, and our bid was far less ambitious. We wanted to renovate the building. This building is quite fantastic, I have to say, but I do have my reservations. One, for the parking, because it isn't going to work with the number of people that use the pools. Even this time of the year, in the winter, we have over 100 swimmers swimming in that pool every day. Now, if you extend this to Pilates and other events during the day, you may get away with it in the winter, but in the summer, it has no chance, because we have up to 2,000 people there with children, with young children, and unless the parking can be resolved, I really would be concerned. These are swimming pools. We're going to lose some swimmers that will find it too difficult to get to the pool and park at the pool, whereas you might take over some other people. It could be a floating community. So I would be wary as to how you go about it. Maybe you've got to speak to the state's members and say, maybe the whole of the Vallette has to be 3-hour parking. I don't know. Something has to happen. If you want this to succeed, it's not going to succeed by magic. And I think you have to face facts. It's always going to cost you money. At the moment, we as the Friends, we've been plugging the pools every year so that we lose less water. The pool is at a reasonable standard now. We are embarking on doing that again in the spring. We've fitted out the other changing room, and I know it could be short term, but there are so many people that are using that area that we feel that our money has been well spent. So I'd just like you to bear in mind these things, because it's a very important place to Guernsey. I've been using the place since 1953. I've seen a lot of changes. I could tell a lot of you the history of these pools that maybe fascinate you, but not at this time, because other people might have some important points to put forward, probably more important than mine. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Obviously, we are aware of at least some of the points that you're making, but your points are well made. obviously we don't have control over the parking. We might have some influence as part of the planning process, and and the fact that we're having constructive dialogue with government. But as we know, parking is a continuing conundrum within the whole island. And I do firmly believe that it's not just about cars, but there are people who need transport. So yeah, we've got to factor that in. So thank you for your comments. But I can't give you a definitive answer on the parking until we've moved this further along the way. Yeah, Kay.
Thank you. I'd like to commend the vision that's gone into this project. I think it's something which is fantastically forward-looking, and I'm sure that you will find a way to resolve the parking issues. And I was born here and I've used the pools for many years, but I think this could be a fantastic future for the area. And I would also make the point that with my Chamber of Commerce hat on, we're very mindful that when there's something that draws people into a particular area, they find a way there. For instance, 4,000 people attending Seafront Sundays. So I'm sure that with the right energy and enthusiasm, you'll find a way through it.
Thanks, Kay. And if you've got any great ideas, please share them with us. Brilliant. Yeah, the gentleman here.
What I would like to...
Could you just wait for the microphone because we need to... Thanks.
Hi, my name is Peter. I've lived here since 1969. I came here in 1952 with the family. Initially my grandparents. Parking seems to be a big issue. The other side of the road, there is a bank as far as I recall it. Mm-hmm. Now, why not take some of that bank out and provide motorcycle and scooter and cycle parking? You could carve it out, put the roof back on, grass it over, and you could maybe have another 50 places there. A lot of people with motorbikes. I've got one, I had one for years. Lots of kids with scooters. Why not introduce them into the area? Lots of people have got scooters and motorbikes. Yeah. Just a thought.
No, it is a good idea, and it's something on paper works very well. I think the logistics of that sort of construction would make them probably the world's most expensive parking space, because that bank is retaining essentially a lot of that cliff. At the moment, that area has been given over to this sort of biodiversity, and actually, you sort of argue, should that then be sacrificed for the sake of people being able to park their car?
You put the roof back on again.
On paper, structurally, it doesn't really work in that same way. It'd have to be quite significant structure. So, but yeah, it's a good idea, and it is something we had considered. But again, because we sort of isolated this part of the site, that maybe that could be a further phase. But sort of engaging with across the road was a bit too much for this stage.
Yeah, I think cost is going to be the factor, and it's just worth mentioning that the advantage of having somebody like Andy Hall with all his experience is that he's helped value engineer. So we've got Dave, who's a great designer, but we've got to strike a balance, and we've actually worked hard on the value engineering side without compromising the building. And one of my concerns is I'm saying 1.5 million, but if it ends up at 2 million or 2.5 million, we're going to have a serious problem. So it could be a phase 2. I think it's more likely to be a phase 2 or even a phase 3 than a phase 1. But this is the sort of feedback we need and the sort of ideas we need. And then obviously, government might have a view.
Well, maybe government might be interested in creating more space.
We can ask them. We can ask them, but we won't put them on the spot tonight. Joe here.
I don't even know. Hi, sorry, Joe Wyatt. Just going back to the parking, maybe putting it to bed. We've got some fantastic areas in Guernsey with some very poor parking. And you really, when you're looking at change, you need to change yourselves, your outlook. You only have to look at the likes of Port Swaff on a sunny day and how many families enjoy that and how difficult it is to park. And yet so many car share, so many people take the bus from other ends of the island. And perhaps really we need to change our own mindset about how we're getting there.
There we have two sides to the argument. And, you know, I'm a Libran, so I tend to weigh things up. But, Stephen, yeah. Have you brought your checkbook?
I'm not going to talk about money, Dave, but with my Cheshire Home hat on, firstly, thank you so much for the work that's been done. It's inspirational in the home. And picking up on that, without talking about car parking, the other issue that you've got, obviously, is the maintenance of the pools, the maintenance improvement and the accessibility of the pools, which you clearly can't control yourselves. How are you handling that?
Well, I'll let Dave answer that, but, you know, you answer it first, Dave, and then I'll chip in.
Well, yeah. How you're handling it from a government perspective in terms of those conversations. From the building perspective, we found a way that we could create this accessibility to the pools, albeit if we start to introduce those sort of infrastructural changes to access to the pools, it then becomes essentially a responsibility to maintain that, and there's a significant cost to implementing it as well as maintaining it. So I think there's a definite opportunity to create that. Quite how that comes about, whether it comes about as another phase, whether it comes about because someone is particularly adamant that that's something that needs to happen and they're willing to fund it, or whether it's something that government can build into the works that need to be done to maintain the pools, and that it becomes part of that phase.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. First of all, there's still a discussion to be had with government about how strongly they feel about the absolute maximum amount of accessibility, particularly to the pools. Dave has mentioned we've got some ideas, but there's a cost involved. Now, who's going to pay for it? I think at the moment it's beyond us, but as you know, Stephen, there are charitable funds out there who particularly want to support the disabled. So as part of my discussions ongoing, I will be talking to those and saying, look, this could be an add-on. If you particularly want to support us and you want often funders want a specific part of a project rather than just chuck it in the pot. And to me, this is the one that's crying out. So we're not devoid of ideas.
Just for clarity, your leasehold that you're trying to negotiate with the states is purely for the building area and the mound. It's not for anything this side of the building as far as the pools are concerned.
No, but it doesn't preclude us from having we're having a discussion about maintenance of the pools. The discussion could bring in the accessibility, and actually, it's not off the agenda. We're just sort of working through the process, and so in a way it's quite nice that you've made the point, because then I'll make sure it is most certainly on the agenda.
And I think probably just to add as well that we've obviously focused on creating the accessibility of the building itself, because currently every part of that building has a hurdle to get to. There's steps up to the kiosk level and there's steps up to the change room level. So by addressing that within the building, it's encouraging the use of the building, and then in turn, if we can then follow on to the pools, it'll help. So.
Okay, how are we doing? Yeah, there's one more over there.
Hello, my name's Anna Gilbert. You've talked a bit, we've talked around the maintenance of the pools, but we don't seem to have any clear idea of what you're negotiating, how that's being negotiated, because we go there for the swimming. Brian's talked about that the Friends of the Vallette do some of the maintenance. Can you talk a bit about whose responsibility is it? What correspondence are you having with States Property Services? What commitments have you got? Because they're beautiful Victorian pools, but they need a huge amount of maintenance.
We've been adamant right from the go. We are not taking on the responsibility for maintaining the pools, but equally we have said, what is the point of us spending 1.5 million if in 3 years' time those pools are in a dreadful state of repair? So We will not sign an agreement until we have got a satisfactory arrangement, agreement, understanding on the maintenance of the pools. And as I mentioned earlier, we asked government to commission a survey. They said it was already something they were intending to do, and they are doing it. Until we see that survey, we can't have the next discussion, because the survey will inform. I'm expecting the survey to give an indication of what it's going to cost to maintain those pools to an acceptable standard going forward, and then for government to commit to that outgoing. But at the moment, the ball's not with us; it's with government. David, yeah.
Hi. First of all, I think I understand a little bit what you guys have been through over the last 10 to 12 months. So I would like to commend your generosity and the hundreds and hundreds of hours spent unselfishly for the community. And also, I would like to provide a sentence of comfort, because in my experience, innovation very often starts by being ridiculed, and then they become heavily resisted. But at the end, they become an evidence. And I can see this standing out as an evidence 5 years down the line. So I wish you the very best.
Thank you, David. And hopefully by then we'll be on to the next project, which might be Somray Park, which is the ultimate prize for, not for me particularly, but for some people I know. Yeah, Dennis. Johnny? Emily, how are we doing online? Okay. Okay, thanks. Dennis?
Yes, thanks very much, David. I'd also like to commend the team. They've done a great job, what they've come up with. As I was previously involved in one of the other proposals, and we know the government asked, part of the remit was to have a performance area, and obviously there is a flexible outdoor area in the design. Is that the extent in terms of the long-term vision, or I'm just curious really to see if that was how it was being addressed?
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, what we've tried to do is create a sort of flexibility within a limited site and without expanding on it too much. Obviously the proposals you put forward in terms of a performance space on the other side of the road, I think it doesn't really impact that potentially being a further phase and going forward. Equally, we've tried to allow the provision that there is some tiered areas, there is a square, there is areas that can be accommodated, although they're not solely designed around being perhaps a stage and a musical performance space, that they can be adapted and suitable for a mixture of other uses as well. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, we're coming up to 8:30. We've got a lady over there who'd like to ask a question. I'm happy to stand here all night and answer questions, but I'm going to get thirsty at some point. But so keep the questions coming, but I'm also conscious that some people have been leaving. So, don't be embarrassed if you've got commitments and you need to get home. We understand. Sorry.
I'll just say to the point raised by the gentleman there in the green jumper, I don't think I've heard anybody here tonight ridiculing the proposals. I think I've heard people who use these pools on a daily basis and have done for years and years, just wanting to understand and also to see the pool itself brought back to, really good condition. So I think just to add balance to that.
Sure.
One small question, will there be a kitchen in the changing room?
Is there a kitchen in the changing room?
No, there isn't a kitchen in the changing room at the moment on the plans. There's a kitchen above the changing room. It's a changing room. It's, I think from a regulation, health and safety perspective, you'd struggle. It's something that, you can have a conversation about, but you'd ask why you need a kitchen in a changing room when there's facilities for tea and coffee above.
Okay. So, sorry, the...
Will it be open in the winter?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Sorry?
Fun and games, because sometimes
sometimes you can't even get into the changing rooms. With the weather, the waves, we can't even get to the changing rooms sometimes. So how are we going to get to the restaurant? If we haven't got a kitchen to make a hot drink, the restaurant's closed because of the weather.
So, sorry, if the changing rooms, you can't get to the changing rooms.
Yeah.
You're saying you can't get, but you won't be able to. There's no point in having a kitchen if you can't get to the changing rooms, is there?
You can get changed outside. But if we can't get,
But if you can't get to the changing room because of the weather conditions, surely it's irrelevant whether you've got a kitchen or not.
But you said earlier on that you're going to leave the existing changing rooms there, but just do them up.
Yeah, I mean, Dave's the expert
So
on that.
why don't you just leave us our little kitchen?
We're keeping the existing structure of the building there and then renovating them, but they need to be fully thermally lined and waterproofed and made fit for purpose and comfortable and hygienic. What we're looking to do is the middle section where there is various storage and blocked-in staircases, we are reconfiguring that core to provide this open space, so to provide this area that opens out into the pools, that area that you can stop, sit, have your tea and coffee and cake and have a shower outside and some locker provision, but also circulate upstairs to the cafe level directly from within the changing rooms. So whether it's a conversation with running the cafeteria about whether you can get sort of hot water from there, but to waste.
Have it open in the winter.
It's open.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And you can circulate through the building. So actually, if it's dangerous to access the changing rooms from in front of the changing rooms, it allows you in.
While I'm talking, because that is a beautiful area, and I use it every day. Now that to me does not fit in. That's one ugly building. It really is.
The reality
can you
is,
not change it, so it just actually fits in?
Well, I don't know if you've looked at the model, but that gives you a better perspective. The reality is we're unlikely to please all of the people all of the time, and I'm sure there'll be varying views. If you want to build a robust building that's going to stand the test of time, then you've got to work with certain materials, and it's got to be built in a certain way, and it won't necessarily be everybody's cup of tea, but you would have to say it's better than what is there at the moment. Sorry, Johnny, this gentleman here?
Yes, the slides were saying a lot about accessibility to all for the project. The people that use the area most at the moment, you've got a thriving community of swimmers who are passionate about the area and about the building. At the moment, the changing rooms are accessible because they're key holders for the changing rooms. Within that is a key holder system for the little kitchen that's there. Now, looking at your plans, there was no evidence of a kitchen or anything to make a hot drink down there. What time in the morning are you planning on opening your cafe?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. This is detail. In the summer, I would imagine it will be.
You say detail, but if you've got swimmers down there at 6 a.m. and they want a hot drink, but you want to open,
you could actually take your own hot drink. I know that's blunt, but frankly, the problem with this is, as I see it, and I think it's fantastic that there are so many dedicated swimmers, but I'm starting to get the feeling that actually you don't want any change at all.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Well, the questioning that's coming out is starting to give me that impression that you are resistant to change.
No, not at all.
Okay. At the moment, we haven't got a kitchen facility down there. I'm happy to give you an undertaking that we will at least go and look at it, but Dave's already mentioned that we might have health and safety issues, we might have practical issues. But I don't want to stop moving this forward because of that one particular point, if I'm being completely honest with you. We will respect your desires and your wishes as best we can, accommodated within the broader picture. I mean, we can agree to disagree.
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of dialogue between the Friends of La Vallette and Vive La Vallette.
Well, we have been beavering away. There has been dialogue. Steve has spoken to, I think, Brian on many occasions, but you know, I'm not even sure how many members of Friends of La Vallette there are, but there are certainly a number that have got very strong views. But I suspect there might be other Friends of La Vallette who've got differing views. So even, well, I can actually tell you there are, because we've spoken to them. So, you know, who's actually representing Friends of La Vallette? And, you know, it's not as though we haven't spoken to you at all. We're still very early in the process. You know, we haven't even gone to planning yet. Sorry.
No, I was just thinking that it's probably a good time for us to talk about the broad picture rather than just the swimming. You know, we've really, you know, there's lots of potential for the rest of the community to access the pool. So I think we should. And
I think also it's an opportunity to probably we're still in this process. So you know the conversation is ongoing, and if we can talk about how we can accommodate those things that you see are key importances with the building, then we're not at that point where it's all set in stone, you know. So I think let's keep that dialogue going, but I think we've got to, like Helen said, see the bigger picture and actually what good can this offer? How can this enhance what you already have? How can it make it better? You've got an amazing facility down there, free to access pools, you've got a great community, you've got changing rooms, and you have somewhere to have tea. It could be more than that as well, you know. And yes, there's some hurdles, there's some difficulties that we have to get through in regard to bringing more people to site. How do we provision that parking is for the right people? But we need to go through a process to get there, and it can't be the first thing. But I think it would be good to sort of engage with you guys now that we've got something on paper that we can show you, and we can say, well, there's this space, we had it down as storage, but actually, should there be a tea point in there? So, okay.
Thank you. The lady at the back, and then Jenny, I know you want to ask a question as well.
My name's Jenny also.
Oh, well that...
I think this is fantastic. I'm a regular swimmer. I love the kitchen. The kitchen is a major thing to me. It really is. And thank you so much for everybody who looks after it.
Okay.
We need a kitchen.
Your point is duly noted. Other Jenny.
Hello, yes, I used the pools this morning and I went to the public changing rooms. I was so appalled of the condition of it that I actually changed in the rain, and that spurred me to come to this meeting tonight, and I just can't tell you how thrilled I am to see this absolutely fantastic facility. But my question is, who's actually going to clean this place? Because swimming pool areas and shower areas and toilet areas can get very mucky very quickly. Do you anticipate?
That's us. That is us.
Will you be employing cleaners? And also, if you've got all these events upstairs, will you be having a kind of a manager or some sort of team of people that's going to sort it out?
Yeah. The way we will employ cleaners, but we haven't signed a contract with anybody yet because we've got to actually build the building first. But it's a very good point, but it's our responsibility. We've already agreed that with government. So it's one of the things that we're taking on, because we're going to refurbish the changing rooms. It'll be our responsibility to keep them clean. In terms of the management, the way we envisage it, that we'll have somebody to manage the cafe, and then we will have somebody who's managing the facility. Now, the cafe manager or manageress will be a full-time job. The person who's doing the sort of holistic overview on the facilities will almost certainly be a part-time job. But we see at the moment, it's not definitive, but we see a split in the roles, so that the cafe, the person responsible for the cafe will focus on that offering. whereas everything else will fall. So it could be liaison with the landlord, it could be liaison with people using the facilities for hire or whatever, and just generally looking after the overall facility. So they would have responsibility for cleaning the changing rooms. Any more for anybody? Yeah, there's a lady in the back there. Emily, we still okay off? Yeah?
Start to wrap up.
Yeah.
Someone asked about whether the view from the mound would be inhibited by the new building.
The view from the mound?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, Dave, can you just take that one and then we'll take one from the lady?
Sorry, I missed the question.
Will the
Will the mound be inhibited?
Inhibited? No. In short answer is no.
That's how we like it.
Yeah, well, I can elaborate slightly. I mean, what it's doing is it's actually creating more space on that mound to use and a safer space to use. But also the building is designed to be transparent so that, you know, although it may not be a 360 view because it'll be broken up, there are elements of the entire view, whether that be through the building or whether you step down to the lower terrace that sits over the top of the cafeteria area.
Thanks.
Have questions to individuals? Should we break up?
Yeah, no, we're just going to take this one from the lady here in the back, and then what I'd like to suggest is that we break there, but we're going to adjourn to the bar, and if anybody wants to come in there and talk to us, you're very, very welcome. And the other thing is that if there's any stuff that's come in online that we haven't dealt with, we will be updating the website. We've already got frequently asked questions, but we don't have very many of those because it's only a holding website. But that will become much more interactive as we move through the process. So certainly some of the questions that have been raised tonight, we will try and address on an ongoing basis through the website. So this lady, yes.
Good evening. I've been interested to hear all about the plans you've put. What I would like to ask about is the floor area which has got the rooms that are proposed to use for, you say, Pilates or, well, there's an idea of other things. What's the actual capacity for people in those rooms? Presumably there's a limit we can put in them. And can the rooms be used together, or are you envisaging one room at a time for different events? And the other thing is to do with, you were talking earlier about music. Could you tell me what sort of music you envisage being used there and at what times?
Well, I think, sorry, before I get, in terms of the actual activities, I mean, that's further down the line. We're just saying these are examples of how the facility could possibly be used. But, you know, it might be the Styx Choir, it might be the Guernsey Mine Choir. I don't know. I don't know how many people there are. It's likely to be smaller groups. Okay.
That's an idea of how many people can use those rooms for
regulations. Yeah.
Yeah, so those rooms are kind of defined somewhat by using the existing building and the footprint of there and not overdeveloping the site. So, as I talked about, trying to maintain the landscape that is there. The building's also designed to be flexible, so although they are rooms that can be a training room where you can sit 12, 14 people around a table, you can probably sit 20 people in a theatre arrangement like this, or it might be 8 people doing a yoga class. But also there's the ability to close those rooms up, to open them up, and so that they're not really rooms, it's an open space that can be divided up into smaller portions of space, depending on what the uses are and what the needs are. And actually when those spaces aren't being used, if there is not an art class or there's not an exhibition, then actually it's just an extension of the internal space that people can go and sit in, can go and grab a coffee, can sit down, can watch the swimmers, can sit in front of the fireplace and enjoy a hot chocolate. And it's flexible and it will adapt to what it's need to be used for. It's crudely think of as sort of a community centre, you know, and how rooms are closed up and opened up for different events, whether it's kids' parties, yoga classes, or something like this. You know, it's to create that, allow the community to drive what that space is going to be.
I'm just a bit hesitant because I'm aware there's a lot of swimmers here who use the facility. You were mentioning earlier about fitting into the biodiversity, or whatever the word might have been used. But to me, it just strikes me that that doesn't really support music on the outside. People probably go there for the quiet that it provides rather than music events.
I think what it isn't it's not a nightclub or a music venue. We're creating the potential, the opportunity that there can be an event there where there's some music, where there is a food market. It's the flexibility in it, really. So it's not defining it as one only use for one space.
Is there any chance of asking the people who use it, the swimmers, if they would appreciate music while they're swimming?
I think the thing is, the people who use it is the whole community.
Okay, can I just say thank you to everybody for sticking with us, but particularly coming along and for such an interesting and diverse array of questions. As I say, we're on the journey. We've got a long, long way to go. We're going to adjourn to the bar, and Helen, Steve, the whole team will be very happy to have an informal chat in the bar if anybody feels the need. But other than that, we will do our very best to keep you informed as we move through the process. And, you know, the planning application, we hope, will be submitted in the relatively near future. So thank you very much. And I'd just like to thank my colleagues here and for you. So thank you. And can I just say thank you to Ollie for his technical expertise. And also, yeah, thank you, Ollie. And can I also say thank you to the Cotills, who've been absolutely fantastic. We've messed them around, and Vanessa, if she's still here, she's been an absolute star. Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, the Cotills. Oh, and sorry, yes, Emily, our online guru. That's it, folks. Safe journey home.